This is Ethan, and I'm here with Dave, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 84-inch.
On this week's episode, we interview Bill Mumy, the legendary actor, musician, and one half of the iconic comedy and music duo Barnes and Barnes.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
We did it! We made it to 84 inches. That's 7 feet.
Wow! I can't believe it. We're already 4.2% of the way to our goal of 166 2/3 feet.
Yeah, good thing we converted our podcast name to inches. Our theme song would not have been as catchy if we left it as Dave and Ethan's 166 2/3 foot Weird Al podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we had quite a historic episode the last 2 weeks where we brought Bermuda back and he shared amazing, rare Weird Al audio clips. And our listeners just could not get enough.
It's always a treat to have Bermuda on the podcast, and I love it when he brings with him rare clips from his audio archives. They're so much fun.
Oh, so Dave, what was your favorite rare clip that Bermuda shared this time?
I think it had to be the 8 seconds of silence that our intern Frank accidentally left in last week's episode.
Oh, yeah. Now, that was obviously the rare and unreleased audio from the Off the Deep End album when they were recording the silence between You Don't Love Me Anymore and Bite Me. Now, after we recorded, Bermuda decided that that was just too rare to release, but unfortunately, our intern Frank didn't get the memo in time.
Well, then it's a really good thing that Frank fixed it after only a few hours. Now, that exclusive clip of 8 seconds of silence will only be available to our Patreon supporters at the $27 level. So if you want to hear those 8 seconds of silence, be sure to head on over to our Patreon page over at patreon.com/2000inch and subscribe at the $27 level.
That's really great that we're making that clip available. It'll definitely have to hold people over until next time Bermuda comes on with his rare clips. Now, I have not stopped hearing buzz from our listeners about our upcoming bonus episode series that we are also doing with Bermuda, all about his brand new book, Black and White and Weird All Over.
Yeah, this is so much fun. We're actually sitting down with Bermuda and we're going page by page, picture by picture through his brand new book. And he's giving us all these great insight about every picture in the book. We expect that bonus series of episodes will drop next year. So make sure you get your book or ask for it as a Christmas or holiday gift.
Bermuda's new book makes a great stocking stuffer as long as the person you're getting it for has a very large stocking, because it is a coffee table book.
And if you still have room in that stocking, another great stocking stuffer would be a delicious vegan meal or a t-shirt from Burrito in Troy, New York. This week's episode is brought to you in part by vegan Mexican restaurant Burrito in Troy, New York, home of the 2-pound double wrapped in a quesadilla Burrito. Come on down to Burrito and Burrito your Burrito. Find them at burritosquared.com or at burritosquared on Instagram. And remember, not every burrito is a burrito, but every burrito can be burritoed.
Whoa, you must have had too many of Amy's baked beans.
No, that wasn't me. It looks like we received a message on our official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast 347 Spatula Hotline.
The 347 Spatula Hotline, the official hotline of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, is sponsored by Angel Valenzuela and David Cash, two amazing Weird Al fans and podcast supporters.
Hi guys, it's Jackson, friend of the pod. You might remember me from episode 69 and from the names listed off at the end of the episode. I was looking at my Spotify Wrapped this year, where they put together all the statistics of, what your top artists, your top songs are. And Weird Al Yankovic, of course, is listed as my number 3 top artist of the year. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because Another One Rides the Bus is the only song of his in my top 100 songs, and it's second from the bottom at 99. Now, I think what that says about me is that I'm all over the place when it comes to Al. When I listen to Al, I listen to an album, or I listen to a playlist. I don't put one song of Al deep in my smoking playlist or hip hop playlist or love making playlist. I listen to Al all the way through, and you listen to this voicemail all the way through. You should find a better way to spend your day. Have a good one, Dave and Ethan.
Wow. Thank you, Jackson. What an awesome message.
There's no better way to spend the day than listening to voicemails on the official 347 Spatula Hotline. Let me just put that out there.
Now, in addition to Jackson, a few of our other listeners shared that our podcast was their #1 podcast on their Spotify year-end wrap-up.
How awesome. Thanks, everyone, for listening to our podcast on Spotify.
Yes, and our favorite listener from Chile, Andres, sent us his screenshot, but it was in Spanish, so I really have no idea what it said.
All right, well, let me take a look because I took 5 years of Spanish, so I think I can figure this one out.
Oh, good.
Buenos noches, señor. Bienvenido a El Burritos Casa de Salsa. Tenemos muchos platos muy sabrosos. Si puedo recomendar el ardiente pollo al infierno muy delicioso. Su ojo se quemarán. Su estómago estará en fuego. Se quedarán en el baño por una semana. ¿Entiendes lo que digo? Gringo estúpido tonto.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds very positive. Thanks for sending that our way, Andres.
And we also received another Spotify wrap-up from Vincent Anderson, and his says that he listened to 47 episodes for a total of 3,197 minutes?
Wait, only 47 episodes?
Wait, which 5 episodes were beneath you, Vincent?
Each week, we pour our heart and soul into finding amazing guests for the podcast, and you just decide willy-nilly that 5 episodes weren't good enough for you?
I mean, all we ask in return is that you take about 1 hour out of your week to listen to our award-winning voices discuss the majesty that is Weird Al and everything related to him.
What happened to the other 5 episodes, Vincent? What's more important than that? Go on, we'll wait.
I mean, at least Andres listened to all 52 episodes.
Well, maybe Vincent listened to those 5 episodes on the official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast YouTube page over at youtube.2000inch.com, where you can listen to every episode to date, going all the way back to episode 1 inch.
Now that is the only logical conclusion. I know our friend and Weird Al superfan, Vincent, wouldn't slight us like that. Right? Right?
Calm down, Dave.
All right, well, let's check out what's going on in Weird Al news this week.
Yes, Al retweeted a link to his appearance in a brand new music video.
The mashup band Rock Sugar released their video called Shout at the Devil Dog All Night, which is a fun mashup of 4 classic songs and features celebrities such as Mark Hamill, Tress MacNeille, Michael Starr of Steel Panther, and Ian Ziering from the iconic Sharknado series of movies.
And yes, also an appearance by Weird Al with his purple hair, courtesy of his daughter Nina.
Wow, so Al still has his purple hair. Cool. In other news, 2-time Grammy Award nominated Jim Kimo West appears on Anita Lurch's new CD, Love Is My Religion, dropping on Friday, December 11th.
Now, Kimo not only produced the record with Anita, he also played guitar, bass, keyboards, percussion, and he arranged the string parts. This album, Love Is My Religion, is available for pre-order in iTunes and available everywhere on Friday.
Speaking of 2-time Grammy Award nominated Jim Kimo West, his holiday live stream show is coming up this Sunday, December 13th at 7 p.m. Burrito time, 4 p.m. Hollywood Star Time. Kimo will be performing holiday classics from his Christmas albums, along with several other great Kimo tunes.
And tickets are only $15, plus with that purchase, you get 20% off any merchandise. What a great opportunity to pick up Jim's USB drive with all of his music. For more details, check out jimkimowest.com.
And there's another great digital event coming up. Our favorite musical Transformers, Hot Rod and RC, and the rest of the Cybertronic spree guests from episode 80-inch have a live stream coming up this Friday, December 11th.
Yes, this one starts at 9 p.m. Burrito time, 6 p.m. Hollywood Star time, and you can purchase tickets by heading to livefrominside.ca.
We will have Zoom video chats set up for both of these awesome events. So watch our Facebook group over at group.2000inch.com for the links and information, and everyone, you are all invited.
And remember, this will not be a link to watch the show. You will have to purchase your tickets separately and watch the actual show on a different tab or device. This is just a hangout for all of us who are also watching the shows.
And who would not want to hang out with Dave and Ethan and all of our amazing listeners?
Who wouldn't want to hang out with us and our listeners? Well, I can name a few. So first off, I would say...
All right. It is time to move on to this week's guest. And we are so thrilled to welcome our next guest to the podcast. Not only is he a veteran of over 400 television episodes, 18 films, tons of commercials and voiceover projects, and a longtime friend to Weird Al, he is also a prolific musician, a singer, a songwriter, and he's been heard countless number of times on the Dr. Demento Show as Art Barnes, one half of the iconic comedy and music duo Barnes and Barnes. It is our great pleasure to welcome to the podcast Bill Mumy. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you kindly, guys. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. Such a rich career. I don't even know how we can possibly cover all of it.
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Now, obviously, as Dave mentioned, you were part of the band Barnes and Barnes, which anyone who has ever heard the Dr. Demento Show or any sort of novelty music, they absolutely know your song, Fish Heads, which, hands down, is the number one most iconic novelty song of all time. Can you tell us a little bit about Fish Heads and where that came from?
Some things, are almost impossible to kind of define their origin because they become like mythological. But the truth behind the story of Fish Heads was my partner, Robert Hamer, a.k.a. Artie Barnes, and I were we were just having a meal together at a Chinese restaurant on Pico Boulevard in Los Angeles, and a fish was delivered to the table, a fish dish with the head on it, and it just had this somewhat maniacal, dead gaze that stuck with us, and I give 100% creative credit to Robert for writing the chorus. He wrote that chorus, and said when he started singing it, and I was like, "Whoa, that's worth exploring." And I wrote the verses, and there's many more that I think that were laid down over the years or before it kind of became the hit that it became. But so I wrote the verses, and Robert wrote the hook, and when we decided to record it somewhat seriously, it was my suggestion that we use the chipmunk type, the sped up voices. I was a big fan of Dave Seville and the Chipmunks as a kid, and I still play their Christmas album at Christmas. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I liked the Chipmunks and Sheb Willie's Purple People Eater and stuff. I was of that era, and so I suggested we do a sped up vocals for the chorus. Robert resisted that, but I think I proved to be wise in that decision. Yes. and that's the way it happened, folks, in many moons ago, like 42 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Time is a bizarre river. And we've known Al since like 1978. Al played on some of our stuff, and he's such a fine musician and a loyal, good guy.
Yeah, we want to hear more about all the times that you've worked with Weird Al, but I do have a couple more questions about Fish Heads. I just want to know what your thoughts were when that song took off the way it did. First, you got the airplay on Dr. Demento. Then you got Bill Paxton to direct the video, and the video debuted on Saturday Night Live. Just how was that experience?
It was good. Billy was just a a young Texas wannabe actor filmmaker that I had initially met through Sissy Spacek and my girlfriend at the time, Janet Baldwin. We were up at Sissy's house with David Lynch, and David was running a 16 millimeter print of Eraserhead, and Billy and Rocky Shank were there, and Fishheads had just kind of burst kind of onto the scene of dementia, so to speak. And Billy said, we were watching with Eraserhead. If you're familiar with it, it's a very bizarre early David Lynch film. And Billy was like, "Oh man, I want to make a Fishheads movie." And Rocky Shank, who's an amazing artist, photographer, cinematographer as well, was like, "Yeah, let's make a Fishheads movie." And so Barnes and Barnes said, "Well, sure, we'll produce it. You guys start getting your ideas together." And it was a real collaboration, and it was done on the cheapo on a hand-cranked 16 millimeter Bolex camera. It was all on film, nothing digital, of course, and a couple Super 8 cameras we had. And, those guys did a great job, and we all added to the concept. And Billy was so tenacious. He wasn't famous at all. I don't think when Fishheads was made, and when he brought the film to New York to Saturday Night Live, I don't think he'd done anything as an actor. He might have done a couple of little things, but he certainly wasn't a known commodity or anything. And he was just so tenacious. He went to SNL, and he sat in their foyer, and it was almost like a Little Rascals thing. He said, I got a project you got to see. And they were like, "Yeah, right. So does everybody else in America." And he was like, no, man, you're going to love this. You got to see this. And he sat there like all day, and they eventually said, "Well, he's handsome, and we're never going to get rid of him if we don't see what he's got." So they checked it out, and it was on the air the next show. And then it aired again. I believe it was the following week, might have been 2 weeks later or something, but they aired it twice. And then it really it became kind of stuck in the id of society.
Yeah.
So incredible.
Yeah, you never know what's going to stick, right? I mean, you just never know what song or what television show or movie or anything. You throw a lot of stuff out there. Creative people, they combust with their energies and put things out, and sometimes the ones that resonate the strongest are not what you might expect, but it's all good.
Would you say that to be true for your role as Will Robinson in Lost in Space? Was that something you expected to still be talking about however many decades later?
Well, when you're 10, 11, 12, and 13, which is the ages I was working on the original Lost in Space, I don't think you can think beyond the next summer vacation, really.
That's true.
A 12-year-old I could not really get a sense of what he's going to be doing when he's in his 60s. But Lost in Space was a big deal, and I had been working over half my life by the time that project came along, and it was, it was looked so good. Lost in Space, if you ever go look at the first, 20 episodes of Lost in Space, it's just beautifully shot. And, the Jupiter 2 spaceship and the robot and the chariot and all those things look great. It's got that classic horror movie, black and white, 35 millimeter thing, the music by John Williams. It's one of those casts that really clicked instantly, and you can't really buy that. You can try to put a band together out of, guys from famous other bands, thinking, well, I'm going to make a new Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young or something. And sometimes, you might get a something successful, but just casting that show was a bit of showbiz magic, and it really worked. So I'm not that surprised that Lost in Space continues to resonate and run around the world everywhere for nonstop for so long. It's a great canvas to let your imagination loose in, a family in other solar systems and galaxies, And of course, there's several different tonalities to Lost in Space. Some of it was, the beginning was pretty cool, somewhat creepy sci-fi. And then CBS, the network we were on, said, it's getting too scary for little kids. The show was on in what they call the family hour, and 7:30 to 8:30, and they mandated that we tone down the scary part, the darkness. So it quickly evolved into kind of a campy, almost farcical comedy thing with Dr. Smith, the robot, and my character, Will Robinson, as the three stooges in a way. Although I always played it very real. So I think the kids who watched Lost in Space saw it through Will's eyes, and Will always believed everything, no matter how ridiculous it got. So I played it very straight, and Jonathan Harris, who was Dr. Smith, played it so over the top that I needed to balance his bigness by keeping it pretty down to earth with my reactions and my performance. So I loved Lost in Space, man. I'm glad that it still makes people happy, and the Netflix series, the recent Netflix series, which is just now wrapping up filming season 3. I got to be the real Dr. Smith in that show. And what a treat, right? To
So
kind of
cool.
come full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we mentioned earlier that you worked with Weird Al quite a bit in your career with Barnes and Barnes. There's just so many songs that you worked with Weird Al on. I guess let's start in the beginning. The Gumby Jaws Lament off of the Vubaha album. What can you tell us about how Al got involved in that song?
Back in 1979, 1980, Barnes and Barnes used to go down to KMET radio stations on Sunday nights and be guests on the Dr. Demento Show, which at that point in time was globally syndicated. It was had a very large audience and was kind of a big deal. And Al was there just starting out. He kind of, I want to say we kind of took him under our wing a bit, which I think he would agree it was true. But we hung out quite a lot then, especially him and Robert. And, he's such a nice guy that when we were kind of big celebrities, so to speak, on Dr. Demento, I think Al was happy to be a part of our little Lumanian energy. We did some tributes to some things with some of the other cast members, that Al was a part of musically and vocally. And when we were making our first album, Vubaha, which has just recently been re-released and sounds great,
Yeah.
I gotta say, they did a wonderful job going back to the initial source tapes and mastering it really well. That album was recorded in my living room on a 4-track tape machine. And seriously, I'm not
amazing.
embarrassed by that, but but that doesn't embarrass me or anything. When I listen to those, the early stuff, that most all of the Barnes and Barnes stuff really that was done on analog equipment in my house, I go, wow, man. That sounds good. I mean, we didn't have Neumann microphones then. We didn't have the most expensive gear money could buy then. We just had, some good guitars and some cool keyboards and stuff. And anyway, it came out really nice. The reissue of Vubaha on Demented Punk Records sounds great. Really does. So we were working on that project, and there was this waltz that was a strange thing. I think it was, I'm trying to, it's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure that the main instrument on that record was an ARP string ensemble and a rhythm box. And I don't remember if it was, Robert or myself who said, wow, man, we ought to get Weird Al to play accordion on this. That would be really cool. And it was as simple as asking. I don't think he had his Mazda yet. He bought a Mazda RX-7 when he first started making some money. I don't know if that was the car he drove over with, but he came right over and he played great. He's very, very fast learner. He's got a great ear, and Al's a really, really fine musician. And the accordion is such a great Americana and Europe. There's just a great sound to it. I love the organic sound of that instrument. And I don't know anybody who's ever played it better than Al. So he came over and played on that, and I had written the lyric, and Robert was going to sing it, but I had like a cold or a sore throat or something. I'd lost my voice. I don't remember why I'd lost my voice, but my voice was really shot. And so I decided, well, I should do it because my voice sounds like, there's razor blades in my throat and I can barely get air through it. And I think it might have been a 1 or 2 take vocal from me. It's a strange song. It's a really strange song. I haven't heard it, I haven't really listened to it too closely for a while, but it's a good one for sure. It really takes you to someplace strange, something about being on a crowded bus, and it's a very atmospheric, weird perspective lyrically, and Al's accordion helps keep it friendly. He's played on a lot of stuff. I mean, I should have maybe. I knew we were going to do this interview. Maybe I should have compiled a list, but Al played on quite a few different things on different projects. He played on the Seduction of the Innocent album. He played on Sarah Taylor's album. He's played on some of my stuff and quite a bit of Barnes and Barnes stuff. I don't think he played on Wildman Fisher's stuff, but I know he's a part of the video that we did with Wildman Fisher.
Do you know the first time you met Al? Do you have any memory of that?
No. No, I don't. I don't remember details. Come on, I got too many people in my library of memories to remember. Like, oh yeah, I shook your hand at KMET, or I was at some county fair with Dr. Demento and said hey to you. No, I really don't have a memory of the very first time, but I have lots of good memories with Al for sure. He. We played, Barnes and Barnes played a couple of gigs for Dr. Demento's anniversaries or some other cause of celebrations, and we used Al's band and played with Al's band some live shows. And Al, jumping ahead a little bit, Al babysat my kids when they were like 5 and 1.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he listen. He'll tell you. I mean, Al would never deny, but he'll owe me for the rest of his life. And I set him up with his wife, Suzanne,
right?
Who is actually, and I say this in all seriousness, one of the greatest humans on the planet. I mean, she's just a doll and brilliant and funny. And just loving, and I mean, there's nothing but A+ marks for Suzanne. I had met her when she was working at 20th Century Fox Studios, and part of her gig was to promote old 20th Century Fox shows for foreign distribution, which included Lost in Space, and we became friendly back in the 1989, 1990, around that time.
Wow.
I had also fixed Al up before. I fixed him up with his incredible wife. I fixed him up with an incredible, lovely lady who was a makeup artist on Babylon 5, a television series I did for 5 years. And they used to they babysat my kids together a couple of times. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
I can't believe that. So you just, all of Al's love life is thanks to you.
Well, not all of it, but certainly the most important
right.
of all of it. And,
sure.
Not to discount the lovely makeup lady. Yeah, anyway, yes, Al will forever be in my debt, and rightfully so.
Gonna have to add matchmaker to your resume as well.
It's true. It's definitely true. That doesn't get much more successful than Al and Suzanne. I mean,
no.
Nina's a wonderful young lady now, and yeah, it's all because of Mumy.
So it sounds like you knew Suzanne for a while before you hooked the two of them up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What spurred that?
Well, Suzanne caused that actually. She was an executive at 20th Century Fox, and she was traveling a lot. and her family is in Texas, and she was here kind of on her own. And over the course of a handful of years, she had grown a bit weary of dating executives and at the studio and stuff. And she called me one day, and she said, "Mumy, do you know any nice guys?" And I said, "For you?" And she went, "Yeah, for me. I'm tired of dating these jerks." And I said, "Yeah, I do know nice guys, but I said, "Yeah, you know what? My friend Al Yankovic comes to mind." And she said, "Weird Al?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Let me think about that." And some time went by. I don't know. This is true. Some time went by.
Yeah.
And then she called me back up and said, "Mumy, you think your pal Al would really want to go out with me?" And I said, "Oh, Suzanne, yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about that. Yes." She said, "Well, okay, if you say so, let's see if we give that a shot." And the rest is history.
Wow.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Yep, and that the calls with Suzanne took place on the phone in the exact same room in the exact same place that I'm talking to you from right now. So if you guys need to be hooked up,
Yeah.
Mumy Matchmaking is open for business on a charmed phone.
Have you hooked up any other lasting relationships?
I have.
You have?
Yeah, I have. I really have. But if I tell you I hooked up, somebody who you never heard of, it won't have the same effect on the airwaves.
No other Dr. Demento alum that we would know?
No, I don't think so. No, none that come to mind at the moment.
Well, there's still plenty of time left.
That's true.
Are there plenty of us left? That's the question.
All right, so I'm going to read off you a couple more songs that you worked with Weird Al, and if any of them, kind of spark any stories or any thing that you want to mention, just feel free to jump in. I know off the Spaz Chow album, you worked with Al on "I Killed Her with Love."
"I Killed Her with Love" is a solo Robert Hamer, Artie Barnes song. I think Al used to crash at Artie's apartment quite a bit. Maybe he was. I want to say he might still have been in Santa Barbara, but I don't know if that's true or not. But he used to crash at Artie's pad, and Artie had a 4-track recorder in his apartment as well as we had here at my house, kind of a matching recorder. And that was a project they did together at his pad, and it was not an original Spaz Chow song from the original release. When we released, the catalog was re-released many years ago, and Robert was very, very passionate about including bonus tracks that were recorded during the original months or weeks or year, whatever that each album was recorded. "I Killed Her with Love" was definitely a Robert Hamer solo song that was not a Barnes and Barnes track, but there's a lot of bonus tracks on all of those re-releases that were recorded during the time the Spaz Chow or Amazing Adult Fantasy or whatever the albums were. And so, that's a nice song. It's not a funny song, but it's a nice song, and Al played great on it. I wasn't a part of that recording.
Oh, okay, cool. The next instance I have of you, I don't think this song was ever released, but it definitely was on Dr. Demento, the Dr. Demento 15th anniversary song.
That's a good one. Yeah, we cut that here in the year of 1970. Yeah, that was fun. I remember that. Yeah, Al played great. Al sang on that, we harmonized together, and that was just a gift to Dr. Demento, which I think we've done a couple things like that over the decades. We regardless of Saturday Night Live and all the exterior good luck that it came to us musically, none of that would have happened if it weren't for the Dr. Demento Show, because that's what inspired us to send the tape in, Al too, of course. If it weren't for Dr. Demento, the hits that Al has probably would never have been created. And Fishheads wouldn't have been recorded and sent off. It was just something that we goofed around with Anyway, it was all due to Dr. Demento initially playing the stuff and giving us a almost like a television series, we were like an ensemble of the Dr. Demento players. Seriously, between Barnes and Barnes and Al and Damascus and Sulu, at least that group initially, I guess Whimsical Will or Beefalo Bill or whatever. But those characters, it was almost like the old television variety shows. Once a week or a couple of times a month, we'd go down there live and we'd do little skits and play live and do things together and answer questions and stuff on the air. So it was like a little ensemble troupe, and it was really all because of Dr. Demento.
You had mentioned the Seduction of the Innocent band that you were in, and there's 2 songs on there that feature Al, Superhero Blues and Reality Break.
Yeah, those are both really good. I like those a lot. That's going back quite a while. That was 1989, and I know it was 1989 because I was mixing that album while my wife was pregnant with our son, and when we took him home from the hospital after he was born, he was, crying in the car, and I put the rough mixes on in the car, and he immediately calmed down because he'd been hearing them in the womb for a couple of months as I was mixing the record.
Wow.
Yeah, Al played really good on that. Superhero Blues and Reality Break. They're both kind of acoustic-based numbers. Superhero Blues was sung by the late Miguel Ferrer. It's a really good song. I cut that on an old 40s Little Martin acoustic guitar that was Dewey Bunnell's from America. And Reality Break was a waltz that was done on a Gibson J200 of mine. Yeah, Al played real good on both of those. There's some nice riffs on Superhero Blues that he added that sound really good.
Hey, you mentioned Damascus earlier. You and Al were on recently, within the past decade or so, uncovered song called Miniature Golf. Do you remember recording that one?
Not at all.
No.
don't remember any. I don't remember anything about that at all.
Wow.
Yeah, you'd have to play it for me, but I don't. No, that doesn't ring a bell or sink a putt.
All right, so back with Barnes and Barnes, we'll jump ahead to 2009, and off of Op Boppa Chop, I have Al playing 2 songs on there, Oh the Pain, and then part of the Nap Noop, the Middle-Aged Man Suite, Part 3, Ask Me If I Care.
Yeah, that's like a sea shanty. Ask Me If I Care. It's again, it's a waltz. I think I've had Al play on several waltzes. But Ask Me If I Care is cool. That Nap Noop medley, it's like 12 minutes long, and look, the Beatles did everything first, but it was a place to take just half-baked ideas that were lying around and make something out of them that was cohesive. And Al contributed to that really well. And Oh the Pain was basically a nudge nudge wink wink song to Jonathan Harris, who played Dr. Smith on Lost in Space. He used to say "Oh the pain" all the time. That was just a ukulele and Al. That was me on a ukulele that I got in Hawaii in 1967. Kamaka ukulele, really good one. Is that now?
Oh, very cool. All right, and then you mentioned that you had produced an album with Sarah Taylor called The Cure to Everything, and Al plays on 2 tracks on there as well, Haunted by Your Love and The Cure to Everything. What can you tell us about those songs in that album?
That's a really good album, and I'm sure it's still available somewhere. It was a self-released project that Sarah put out. Sarah's a great singer who's, back in the day toured with everybody and as a background singer, Joe Cocker and Tanya Tucker, and just, real professional singer. Sarah introduced me to my wife, Eileen.
Wow.
We've been friends for, 42 years now. And she and her husband have a great recording studio. Used to be Jackson Brown and Little Feat's space out in North Hollywood, and they turned it into this wonderful studio. It's called Ready Mix Music. And it's got that 70s vibe, but it has, everything from analog 24-track tape machines to the most current Pro Tools and stuff. It's a real nice setup out there. And as I said, Sarah's a great singer, and she had asked me to produce a record for her, and I ended up writing, I guess, I'd have to look at it, but I guess 10 of the 12 songs or something. And it's got some wonderful players on it, a bunch of guys from Lucinda Williams' band, Dave Pearlman on pedal steel, Jerry Beckley from America, and Al. Al, if I ask Al, and he's, in town, of course, pre-pandemic, but he's always been very accommodating about being a part of some other music and coming down to play, and he always plays great. And I remember that day very well. He added some real nice parts to those songs, and it was a pleasure working with him as always.
Is there ever anything that you had asked Al to do that he's just like, oh, I can't do that?
No, not that I can think of. Because if he's on the road, I know he's on the road, so I wouldn't ask him to do something when he wasn't in town. And anything I would really ask him to do would be to play accordion. So I know he knows how to do that.
Certainly, yeah.
So if I ask, it's like, hey, put it to you this way. I've never had to say, go take a look at your wife, and then say no. I've never had to play that card with Al.
Keeping that in your back pocket, just in case.
Oh, yeah, it's there, but...
Now, we've talked a lot about your music with Barnes & Barnes, but you've done so much music, and I would love for you to tell us about your band Action Skulls with a really impressive lineup.
Yeah, some things just fall together. And I will say this, I am a very grateful and prolific songwriter. I have kind of learned over the last many decades never to refuse the twitch of the muse. I can tell when I'm about to get something from that ether, that limbo world of inspiration.
Yeah.
And so, look, I'm a craftsman too. If you call me and say, hey, I want to hire you to write me a theme song, I'm quite capable of doing that. But that's not the kind of stuff that ends up on my own records or things like that. My projects that I choose to be a part of releasing anyway are almost always 100% kind of, wow, where'd this one come from? Or I'm gonna ride this one out and write this one. So I really continue, thankfully, to receive inspiration, and I've been indulgent with my own musicality since I was a little kid. There are many episodes of Lost in Space where Will Robinson's, playing the guitar at the age of 11 out there. I have a lot of instruments. I have a recording studio, and I've trained myself to be able to play all those instruments to a certain degree of professionalism. So thank God during this horrible, horrible, historical, heinous year that the entire globe has been dealing with, I'm so grateful that, I've been able to deal with it creatively and go into my studio and, sure, there's a lot of people that are better drummers than me, but you know what? I can keep a groove. So, I mean, I don't want to be calling Ringo and saying, "Can you come over?" Because nobody's coming over.
Right.
So this year, boy, I've been a part of like 3 albums already that have been started and finished from scratch. And it's so nice to be able to lose yourself in some time being creative, as opposed to like just, reading the news and freaking out.
Right.
And I've there's been plenty of that too, but I have been pretty isolated, and I've managed to put the time to creative good use, I think. Action Skulls, going back to answer your question, is a band with myself, Vicki Peterson from the Bangles, her husband John Cowsill from the Cowsills, and Mike Love's Beach Boys for over 20 years. And originally Rick Rosas, the bass player from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and a lot of solo Neil Young stuff, and Joe Walsh, and one of the best players that ever lived. And unfortunately, Rick has passed away now. But Vicki and John and I have mutual friend who we were going to a Christmas party at, and we went over and sat at the piano and started singing some, Beatles. It always kind of breaks down. You sit down and start singing Beatles, and Beach Boys, and Birds, and all those B bands: Beatles, Beach Boys, Birds, Band, Buffalo Springfield, right? I mean,
Birds and
anyway.
Barnes.
Yeah, I don't think we were on the list that night, but we started to just nerdle around at a party as the party was getting late and the eggnog was flowing, and boy, almost immediately, everybody was like, "Wow, that's a really nice blend to our voices." And of course, John, having grown up in the musical family that the Cowsills and their amazing, sibling harmony parts, obviously the Bangles relied on a lot of vocal harmony. And I've always, been a part of groups that sang harmony. It was that stuff that inspired me to really be professional in my own way. So we instantly floated to some nice parts, and the blend between us sounded really good. So as the night wore on, I believe we said we should see if we can take this anywhere besides cover tunes. And so in the next couple of weeks, I found myself pretty inspired and writing a bunch of half-finished songs. Like I would sit in my robe, like I am now. I would sit in my robe with my iPhone and an acoustic guitar or something, or whatever, a guitar, and record here's the chords I'm playing, here's a verse and a chorus, what do you think? And send it to John and Vicki. And for most of what do you thinks, they were like, "Oh wow, this I love this. Let me maybe I could write the bridge, or let me write the next verse." So that was 6 years ago, and it all fell together very synchronistically. I was at a gig with America, and Rick Rosas was there, and we met backstage, and Rick was like, "Man, I love your stuff. I loved all the Twilight Zones and the shows you did when you were a kid, but I've heard a lot of your music. I really like that too." And he was such a kind, funny, sweet, amazing musician. He was legendary. And I said, "You know what, man? I got this unit, this band, this group with Vicki Peterson from the Bangles and John Cowsill." He goes, "Oh, I know John. I've played with John. He's great drummer." And he said, "Do you have a bass player?" And I mean, he really did. I mean, it's almost, honestly, it's kind of like, Ringo saying, "Do you have a drummer?" I mean, he was just he's so great. He says, "Do you have a bass player?" And I said, "Yeah, it's you." He goes, "Great." And I go home that night. We exchanged information. I go home that night, and about 1:00 in the morning, I get a text from Rick, and he said, I don't want you to think I was giving you any bull there. I'd really love to make music with you guys. So it was a gift of greatness and synchronicity, and the four of us went into the studio, Sarah Taylor Studio, Ready Mix, and with everybody old fashioned. Here's the drum kit, and John's looking at Rick, who's plugged into the direct box, and there's Vicky with an amp in one isolation booth and me with an amp in another. We're all looking at each other, and it's 1, 2, 3, let's go. And we cut the first album together. Then that album was sweetened, of course, but I mean the basic tracks to the Action Skulls first album, which is called Angels Here, were just all cut with players playing together and laying down the groove, and it was a wonderful experience. And between everybody else's gigs, between John going out with the Beach Boys, Mike Love and the Beach Boys until the pandemic hit, they played 200 gigs a year, from playing the London Palladium to playing some funky Native American casino somewhere, but they just go gig. So it was kind of hard to get everybody packed together. I know that Rick went on to do the Neil Young's European Crazy Horse tour, and then he did Ricky and the Flash movie with Meryl Streep. Vicky was doing some Bangles stuff, and I did a film and a solo record, and then Rick passed away, which was unexpected, but welcome to reality. So the pandemic hit. I know it's not the cheeriest story, but you brought it up. The last gig I played of this year was on Saturday, February 29th at the Alex Theater with John Sebastian and the Reunited Love and Spoonful. It was an amazing gig. 2,500 people, sold out. It was the first time John Sebastian and Steve Boone and Joe Butler had reunited in like 40 years. And it was a wonderful, wonderful night making music with, sharing the stage with John Sebastian. And that was the 29th of February. And almost immediately after that we were in a shutdown, and COVID was well known and spreading around the globe. So that was the last gig I played. And almost immediately, within like 2 weeks, I was writing songs about how this spreading virus would be affecting different Americans. It was like a short story or a play in a way. Like I was thinking, okay, I'm a elderly person and I can't see my family, or I'm stuck over in Australia, I can't get back. All these, it was like a short story of lyrics that I was writing from characters' perspectives. And I wrote probably 9 sets of lyrics within probably a week, which doesn't really seem like that incredibly difficult when you're focused. And anyway, that's what I did. I wrote these lyrics, and then I sat and I looked at them, and I said, well, okay, I've got these little pieces here now. And I said, well, they should be represented as American folk songs, kind of like the Dust Bowl Depression era. I really looked at these characters and lyrics in a similar way to what was happening during the Depression. So I said, well, okay, I've got a studio. I can play the guitar, I can play the bass, I can play the banjo, and I can play mandolin. So I wanted to keep it all acoustic. So I started writing. There was some piano on there too. So I started recording these songs. No drums, no electric guitars or anything. Just a very folky, stripped back, in folky and in some ways almost bluegrass type tracks to these songs. And when the first one was done, which was called Social Distancing Blues, I sent it to Vicky and John, not thinking anything regarding the group, the Action Skulls, just saying, "Hey, man, I just did this. What do you guys think?" I just sent it off to them, and they sent it back to me with great harmonies all over it. I mean, they have a studio as well in their home, so I wasn't expecting that, but it came back, and it transformed from this. I don't like to really use comparisons, but I will. It came back. It went to them kind of like a Woody Guthrie thing. Here's me by myself playing, a song, and it comes back almost like, Peter, Paul, and Mary or something, the Kingston Trio, whatever. It had these great harmony parts on it, and I said, "Oh man, what a nice surprise! What a gift!" And then I said to them, "So you guys, this has got to be an Action Skulls record." And they just laughed. They went, "You're crazy." And I said, "No, you have to do it." I said, you don't have a choice. You can't tease me like this. I said, you don't have a choice. And I drove them crazy because it was all done file sharing, right? I mean, we were never in the same studio for this record, but within 2 weeks, there were 11 songs finished and with incredibly polished vocal harmonies from Vicky and John. And so we put the album out, I know for a fact it's the very first project that addressed the pandemic as a theme, because every song addressed is about that. And it's kind of like a soundtrack to a play. And it was out by the end of April. It was out. So that was a real creative spurt, and I encourage people to find that, because it's a little pocket of Americana tunes that I wrote, and I played all the tracks. There's no additional musical tracks from Vicky and John, but all the harmonies and arrangements, vocal arrangements, are from them. It sounds really good, and if you like that rootsy Americana stuff, it's certainly worth listening to. It was a very creative, project that came out real quickly and real honestly. And when I think about it now, Al would have been a great addition to it. And I say that seriously. The accordion would have been a wonderful addition to that project. Next pandemic.
You can always do a follow-up album.
Yeah.
Invite Al.
Well, to tell you the truth, again, we have Action Skulls has maybe 8 or 9 full-on, like, rock and roll band tracks that we have done also since April.
Oh, wow.
Via file sharing with John on drums and a few that had been started here earlier. But there's a third Action Skulls record in process,
Nice.
and they're not out on the road right now. So that may come to fruition a little sooner than later.
Well, I know we can check out the Action Skulls stuff on iTunes and Amazon, all the digital places. So people should definitely check that out. But this is not the only album that has been born from the pandemic and your time at home. You also just released a brand new solo album called Good Grief.
Yep, I sure did, and it's completely different from any solo project I've done in the past, and it's certainly at the opposite spectrum musically and attitudinally from the Action Skulls record or Barnes and Barnes. The songs came out during this period, and there's a real cohesiveness to the arrangements and the tracks, and I'd like to categorize it, but it's hard to be objective about something you've done all by yourself.
Yeah.
But I think it has a very a dreamlike quality to it. There's a wash on these tracks that has a dreamy thing that connects it, and I can't really articulate that better than I just did. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a specific reverb. I wouldn't say it's a specific approach to the drums. There's a certain amount of mono in the mixes that keep things from spreading too much, but there's also ear candy left and right, and it's kind of dreamy. And I've been calling it hard-hitting songs for hard-hitting times, and I think that's accurate. That doesn't mean it's a hard heavy metal record. It's not like that, but it's definitely an electric record. Whereas, the Skulls project was all acoustic and very Americana. This isn't completely out of the galaxy of Americana because that's who I am. But it's a very much an electric record with a kind of a deeper, dreamier state to it. And again, I just hope people check it out. It's very hard to be objective about something that you've just signed the canvas to. You know what I mean?
Right.
I walk into the studio and I've got a song. Okay, how do I do that? Okay, I'm gonna play a guitar part to that song. Then I'm gonna just sing a rough vocal. Now I've got a guitar and a rough vocal. Okay, what am I gonna do next? I'm gonna find a really good bass line. And I will say the bass parts on Good Grief are I think the best bass parts I've played in a long time. So now I got a guitar and I got a bass. Then you start sweetening. Well, let's go to the drums. Let's lock into the bass. It just grows one little thing at a time until sometimes you look at it or listen to it and you go, oh, there's too much going on here. I want to take that little maraca bit off, or I didn't need that extra guitar. But you try to be objective and whittle it down to a place where you go, yeah, that one goes into the next one really nicely. And, I like to think of an album as an album. I know that a lot of people in today's world, they just, I heard this track, I'll download this one track or something. But if I'm going to put out an album, it's going to flow from the beginning to the end. And the space between those songs and the way those songs flow from one to the next is super important. It's the same as it's telling a story. It's the same as making a movie. You don't want to cut your movie out of sequence. And when you're making a record, you have to find that sequence. I used to burn mixes of multiple sequences, and then sit in my car, drive around a little bit in my car, and go, yeah, these first four go together really well, but 5 should be 9. Anyway. It's I take it very seriously putting an album together, and like I said, it's just released in the last week.
Wow.
And so it's like signing the canvas. A year from now I'll be able to hear it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right.
But having done everything and just kind of feeling good enough to say, okay, it's birthed. You can hear it too.
Right.
But I don't think I'll really hear it for another year or two. Let me do a couple other projects and not listen to this for 5 months. And then I'll put it on in the car or something and I'll go, oh, that almost always happens. There's always like wow, I really like this. This is good. I forgot about that bass line. And then there's also always a why did I let that drum fill stay?
Or why did I put Barking in the Garden second? It should have been fourth,
Right. And the other thing, because there's no gigging, and sadly, I don't expect that to be something that returns too quickly.
Yeah.
I've been so blessed in my life to gigging since I was a teenager, and in every kind of format you can imagine, from playing guitar in Sean Cassidy's band when he was selling 10 million records in a year, and every night we played to screaming kids at a sports arena, to playing clubs here, to an intimate like the Troubadour or something where there's a couple hundred people, or even a smaller club where there's 100 people, and it's just to playing the Hollywood Bowl or the Greek Theater and all of those different places I've had the opportunities to play over my life, and I don't know when people are going to feel good enough to be shoulder to shoulder again. So I've been making, now I'm just kind of learning the process with the limited equipment that I have here, of putting some kind of decent videos together, so that there's some way to like refresh the audience, like say, hey, in a month, hey man, here's a video to Barking in the Garden. What do you think? Oh yeah, by the way, I'm really trying to get you to hear the song. But if I have to put an image of, my dog in it, so be it.
Right.
I don't know how to reach people anymore outside of social media.
Yeah.
And a few things like this. I mean, I don't know what your audience size is, but I'm, here I am yakking.
It is the holiday season, and I would love to hear about your holiday album that Barnes and Barnes put out last year.
Yeah, holidays in Lumania,
Yeah.
man. It covers.
Right.
First of all, it's always great to be able to reunite
Yeah.
with Barnes and Barnes, and I say this with all honesty. It's very much like, let's say, Laurel and Hardy. It's very much like Lucy and Ethel.
Mhm.
It's not so much Mumy and Hamer. It's like these characters that we created 50 years ago that are very different from us, but they're real characters, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so when we make music together as Barnes and Barnes, it's not like when we're working with, say, America and making music as Mumy and Hamer. It's different. It's just, it's a real treat to reunite to that energy, because it's like playing Will Robinson. It's like Will Robinson and Dr. Smith or something. It's like Spock and Kirk. That's not Shatner and Nimoy, or that's not me and Jonathan Harris. Those are characters.
Yeah.
So Art and Artie Barnes have a very specific energy that they have, created somehow over the last 50 years. And I always treasure the opportunity to return to that, because it's absolutely different. I don't play the guitar the same way as Bill Mumy when I'm Art Barnes. There's no limitations with Barnes and Barnes. Literally none. You can say, which we have done in the past, let's put a rock on this keyboard and put a phase shifter on it, and just swing it from left to right as an under. In fact, we've done things like that. Let's take a hammer and hit this the leg of this Wurlitzer electric piano as a snare drum. We have done all of those things, and those are things I probably wouldn't, I won't say I wouldn't dare to do, but I just wouldn't want to do on a Bill Mumy record.
Right.
But with Barnes and Barnes, it just, the imagination swims farther out to sea. And it started, the project, again, came together very quickly, but it started as a response to stopping something that Robert wanted to do. Robert said, we've got a bunch of these old Christmas songs. I'm going to do a compilation of them and put it out to make some money. And I said, well, but we didn't put most of those out in the first place because they weren't great.
Right.
And he was like, no, they're great. They're great. They're fine. They're great. And I was like, no, I don't really like that idea. He said, well, if you've got anything, if you got another one or two, we can fill it up. And so I sat down and I immediately wrote and recorded It's Christmas in Lumania, the title track, the opening track,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other things that I did by myself. And I said, look, let me just keep going here, right? I said, instead of putting out stuff that was never a material, was never something that we both agreed on, was like, yeah, we're going to put, this out. Let's see what we come up with starting from scratch. And so I, within a period of a couple of weeks, had like 7 or 8 basic tracks. And then Robert, who's very reclusive and doesn't leave his house much and has some health issues of his own, he came over to the studio, and he wrote like 3 tracks, which are great, and then he colored and changed, the stuff that I had done without him. So it changed and metamorphosized into a legitimate Barnes and Barnes songs, as opposed to like, well, here, just sing this part. It was
Right.
He added his talents in terms of the composition as well as the arrangements and vocals to take them to a different place, as he always does. So we put the project together, really from something that had been kind of a cheapo, let's just throw something out here, make a few bucks, to something that we both feel very proud about. And those other things are still in the can,
Right.
He may throw them out one day, but they're still in the can. And the new album, I still think it still feels pretty new. It covers most all the different holidays, from Kwanzaa to Hanukkah to Christmas to to just, there's some real sad, spooky tales on that record of being alone at the holidays and having no money at the holidays. And I mean, it's not a Burl Ives record, it's not a Beach Boys record,
Right.
but it's a Barnes and Barnes record, and it's definitely a one of a kind. Doesn't sound like anybody else, that's for sure.
No.
The vinyl release of that one is so cool. It's like this transparent green with opaque red holidays swirl, and it just looks beautiful.
Yeah, John Caffiero, who runs Demented Punk Records, we had met him originally. He did a project with Dr. Demento a couple of years back that I think went to like #1 on Billboard, comedy. Anyway, very successful guy. He has spared no expense in terms of artistic designs. The packages for both Vubaha reissue and Holidays in Lumania are really, really beautiful, top notch, well done. The mastering is great. The records sound really, really good. And he's got, holidays, if you're looking for presents to buy besides the records, there's T-shirts, there's masks, there's all sorts of like Barnes and Barnes goodies that, we haven't had stuff like that in 40 years. It's great to see our classic logo on T-shirts again, Fish Heads T-shirts and Great Newts T-shirts and masks.
Yes.
And Demented Punk has done a really quality job of manufacturing and putting this stuff together, and I'm grateful for that. It's fun.
Yeah, and if people are interested in getting autographs, there is so many opportunities, because on Demented Punk, for a limited time, people can get a free limited edition autographed holiday card when they order Holidays in Lumania, which is just so cool. And that album that just came out, Good Grief, you can get those autographed, as well as your other solo albums and other albums autographed over at gragroup.com. There's a whole bunch over there. So really, people's trees and Hanukkah, whatever they put presents at this year, are going to be completely full of Bill Mumy, Barnes and Barnes, and their digital libraries are going to be full of Action Skulls, because there's just so much amazing music out there right now.
Yeah, and they can hear Weird Al Yankovic on Gumby Jaw's Lament from the first Barnes and Barnes album reissue.
Yes.
Zubaha in, what is it, like 180 gram vinyl or something, sounding better than it did back in 1979. Yeah, it's cool. It's nice to have all this stuff, and certainly in this era that we're living in, which I know will get better, and this too shall pass, but for the time being, it's good to have music to listen to, and kind of hunker down and play your music.
Yeah.
With over 400 different TV episodes that you've been on, there's no way we can possibly cover every one of them. But there's one that I do want to ask you about, and that is playing a mailman on the Weird Al show.
Yeah.
I had to go deep for that.
Not just any mailman, but that mailman had, a PhD in anthropology, a degree in quantum physics,
Nobel Prize.
Right. Right.
So what can you tell us about working on the Weird Al show with Al?
It was a fun day, and again, as I have asked Al, he has asked me. So I was happy to be a part of that project, and it was just a giggle, It was it was a
Sure.
one-day thing, and it went by quickly, and it was great.
Yeah.
I don't expect or didn't expect to get an Emmy from it, but yeah, it came out fine.
Well, Bill, we are still so honored that you took time to chat with us and tell us about your just incredible career, Fish Heads, Barnes and Barnes, Action Skulls, Lost in Space, working with Weird Al, Dr. Demento. Really, the list goes on, and this has just really been an incredible experience getting to chat with you and hear these stories from you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for spreading some of the music around.
Thanks again to Bill Mumy. That was pretty stinking majestic chatting with him.
I've been a huge fan of Barnes and Barnes and Bill Mumy for so many years, so that was a real treat and just totally bodacious. I was so thrilled that we got to chat with him.
Be sure to head to DementedPunk.com to pick up the Barnes and Barnes holiday album, Holidays in Lamania. And while you're there, also pick up the re-release of Fubaha, featuring Gumby Jaw's Lament with Weird Al, as well as enamel pins, t-shirts, face masks, and much more.
Plus, head to gragroup.com for Bill's brand new album, Good Grief, and head anywhere digital music is sold for the new Action Skulls album, A Different World.
This week's episode is brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota, beautiful, it's also austere.
Darwin is home to Darwin-Dassel Park, the largest park in Meeker County.
At 160 acres, Darwin-Dassel Park has 6.5 miles of trails for hiking, cross-country skiing, and horseback riding.
And according to the Meeker County website, the park has a sliding hill which provides a beautiful lookout over the area restrooms.
The park is popular with locals and tourists and has a very active official Facebook page with 17 likes.
Whoa! Another great reason to discover Darwin. Sounds like they finally got the internet.
So visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next expedition. Discover Darwin more than just the twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, be sure to visit discoverdarwin.biz.
Each week, we're able to bring you this podcast absolutely free, thanks to sponsors like Burrito Burrito, Angel Valenzuela and his son David Cash, Discover Darwin, Jackson Scoggins, and our amazing Patreon supporters like Jeff, Chad, and so many more.
Revenue from our incredible supporters on patreon.com/2000inch allows us to continue doing what we love, which is making fantastically fun, funny, and family-friendly Weird Al podcasts for you each and every week. We'd absolutely appreciate your consideration in joining our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family for as little as $1 per month.
If we know anything here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, it's that Christmas and the holiday season is just around the corner. So this year, get all your holiday shopping done early by purchasing official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast merchandise for everyone on your shopping list from the official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast merchandise shop. Head over to shop.2000inch.com for official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast t-shirts, official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast tote bags, official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast mugs, official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast face masks, and official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast more.
Find us online at weirdalpodcast.com or 2000inch.com, where you can find information about all of our guests and listen to past episodes. Vincent. Please join our Facebook group by heading to group.2000inch.com for episode discussions and other exclusive content. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 2000inch and at youtube.2000inch.com.
Remember to tag fun Weird Al or podcast-related posts on social media using hashtag 2000inch and hashtag Gill and Chill. Be sure to share our posts, tell your friends about the podcast, and we love it when you leave us messages via our 27-hour-a-day podcast hotline, 347 Spatula. You might even hear your message on the air.
You already know where to find us, but do yourselves a favor and head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, or the podcast app of your choice and hit the subscribe button to ensure that you do not miss new episodes. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and bonus episodes may drop at any time.
Thanks once again to this week's guest, Bill Mumy, and thanks to John Caffiero, and thanks to all of our listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters, and sponsors, and everyone else who made this episode and podcast possible.
Well, we made it another foot towards reaching our goal of 166 2/3 feet. And how pretty stinking majestic is it that we got to talk to the legendary Bill Mumy.
Yeah! Good thing our intern Frank didn't accidentally book an interview with Bill Mumy.
Mummy, where? Ah!
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 84-inch. The podcast by Weird Al superfans for a very specific audience.
And the other thing I would like to ask you about is on every one of the Barnes and Barnes songs, it always ends with a yeah. What is the story behind ending the songs with yeah?
Well, it seemed to be a better choice than ending every song with linoleum.
Fair enough.